Well, after my first attempt here on this particular branch to use this high pressure propagation ball and broke off the branch, as you can see right here as I was working on it, it broke off. So I'm going to do it again with this particular one. It's a little smaller, but that's okay. It's showing having rapid growth, and it does have a active meristematic growth at the top. I'm just going to clip that off. I didn't show that in the last part of the video where I did this one, but I did cut it off, and so that it doesn't have a growing point. Then it forces all of the nutrients and hormones to the area where we're working on to have it grafted, if you want to call it that, or starting the propagation right at this node. So what I've done here now is I've cut off another couple of leaves at that node that I'm going to work on, and then I also am cutting off the leaves at the node underneath it. Then I'm going to start at this point at the upper node, and again very carefully, because apparently on the other one I scored it too deep, and when I was working with it, it just broke the stem off, kind of weakening this stem when you even cut just around the bark, and that's all basically what we're trying to do, is cut the bark off. And I can see that this one did the same thing, so I'm not going to use that, but I do have some other ones here that I'm going to use. This one's a little bigger. I'm going to try this one. Get some of these out of the way. This whole cutting propagation technique thing is a little more tedious than just taking a cutting, as you're able to see in what's happening with me here. Kind of unpredictable. So, okay, I'm going to again try to very carefully, but not very deeply, go around the bark and etch it so that I can get that bark off. Now, might also add that I did this a year ago. This is February. And a year ago I had some real success in that I was able to get one. It was the only plant that I was actually working with, or the only branch that I was working with, and it was off of this same, what I'm calling a mother plant. And I had success after about 2 months of growth in the air layer method, using a plastic bag rather than these little high pressure propagation balls. At any rate, I had success. So in June, I decided I was going to try propagating some more. And so instead of doing just one, I ended up doing about a half a dozen. I got really carried away. I wanted to get several plants off of this jasmine plant here because I just really enjoy it. Wanted to give some plants away to other people, and I didn't have any success with those at all. Every one of them, the plants died up here. They just slowly, the leaves started dying and falling off. And so I thought maybe it was the timing. You know, this is another thing that I've read about propagation, and I've had my most successful propagations doing it in the winter. And right now our winter is in Indiana. We're having right now temperatures that are below 20 degrees and expected to go even lower than that. I'm peeling off all of that cambium layer. I can see these little string-like material coming off of it, and that's the foam material that needs to be totally stripped off. If we leave any of that, it interferes with the root development in the node above it. So I've tried to strip all of that off and just to leave it totally bare. I don't know if you can see that where my camera is positioned right now, but yeah, you can see this is the node that's going to have the roots come out of it. Okay, so as before, I'm going to try to help position this a little bit with a little clamp on this stake, and get all my other branches and stuff out of the way here. And as I did before, we'll be filling, this is a wet potting soil. It's not totally saturated, it's just wet. But I'm packing each side of this ball with this packing material. Okay. Now I want to wet this area that I'm going to expect roots to come out of and put some rooting compound on it. As I had said earlier, this rooting compound comes in different forms. This is probably, for this particular type of technique, probably not the best. It doesn't really adhere that well, even though the branch has got a lot of moisture in it and it is sticking to it. But what I'm doing is I'm also putting this rooting compound in this, I'm putting this rooting compound in here to ensure that we're going to have a good take on it. And the other thing, before I clamp it around there, I get some tape to make sure that I'm fastening it to my stake. If not, I'm going to end up with this being way too heavy for it. So okay, so this clamshell kind of in effect, I'm going to take this clamp off of here right now and fasten this around it. As you can see, the soil in here is wet enough that it's not falling out. Okay, so get this guy tied to the stake real good. The ball didn't open up on me. Okay, so there we go. I got the ball fastened to the plant stem and have the ball also fastened to the stake. Now, as I showed earlier, there's a little funnel in the top. We can, a little water in there. It just kind of dripped right on through, which is okay. Keeps it moist in there, but doesn't get too wet. Okay, so we're going to just set that aside and put it in the sun and let it do its thing. Now while I've got this part of it going, and since I accidentally trimmed off the one branch, you can see that I've got these two that came off of the stems earlier, and basically what I'm doing is I'm going to put it in water, and then I've got my root tone. You can see here how that coats nicely. And I'm filling my pot with the remaining moist soil that I have here. I'm going to put both of them in the same pot. So what I've done here is I've opened up 2 holes so that I'm not going to be rubbing my rooting compound off as I stick it in. Okay, so I've got these in there nicely. Moist soil. So now you could put a stake in it to hold the plastic bag that I'm going to put over it, and it's going to be very important for this particular technique to keep the moisture in that environment, because it will have a tendency to just dry out and the leaves will fall off and you will lose your cutting before it has a chance to root. So again, we're going to come back in a couple of months and we'll finish this and see what kinds of roots we have.